Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. Sorry about the delay, but here I am. Not too late, though. Either way, today we're looking at the Philip experiment, the scientific experiment to create a ghost. We've basically delved on, or basically read about this. I've read about this sort of thing before, folks, where people use this sort of scientific method to create Topa or Aragorn and create an artificial spirit. But here we're delving back into the subject with an article detailing the experiment more thoroughly, and we're going to have some more fun. Either way, let's look at, and I mean, I've basically spoken about this experiment before, folks, but have I ever actually done one entirely on it? Maybe, I'm not quite sure. Either way, I'm pretty sure I have talked about it. That's it. But either way, let's go over here and look at basically artwork from my own upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs, and then we'll have some fun. Here we go. Here is the Extreme 90s cover for my graphic novel. I did this cover to harken back to the comics of the early 90s. My book, Scumdogs, is a loving parody of cartoons back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, I parody those kinds of cartoons we used to watch and basically love when we were kids, folks. The Scumdogs, though, they want to take over the world, which is pretty much a given with Saturday morning cartoon villains. But they want to take over the world because they were banned from pro sports. Let me explain. In the far future, where my book takes place, thanks to advancements in magic and science, people can turn themselves into gods or monsters and compete for fame and fortune in superhuman experiments. The Scumdogs competed in experiments held with monsters as the athletes. Yeah. You see, they basically worked for the Scumdogs Corporation, a corporation that used monsters as competitors. And they were known as Scumdogs because they competed for them. But when they were banned for life for being villains and idiots, they decided to use their vast powers to take over the world, but they kept calling themselves Scumdogs just to piss off the corporation that banned them. They're led by Death Mug. Death Mug is the cyborg overlord of the Scumdogs. He's the guy with the mill skull mask. Yeah, he's the guy with the mill skull mask for a face. Death Mug, he's a parody of various villains from 80s and 90s cartoons. You can see in the way I designed him. For one thing, he has a skull for a face that makes him resemble Skeletor, who is the arch enemy of the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon, because both characters had skulls for faces. But if you notice, Deathmug's face is also a middle mask, which resembles the middle mask of Cobra Commander, the leader of Cobra, and the arch enemies of the G.I. Joe or Real American Hero cartoon. Like those villains, Deathmug is over-the-top arrogant and as dumb as a brick. He wants to rule the world, but yeah, as I said, he's just an arrogant dumbass. But don't worry, he's in good company. He might be dumb and arrogant, but his archenemy might be even worse than he is. Buick Starpoon. Buick Starpoon is the guy with the pompadour hair with the little palm tree growing out of it. He's the leader of the Wild Rangers, who are basically my parody of G.I. Joe crossed over with Starfleet from Star Trek. Buick Starpoon himself, he's basically Duke from G.I. Joe, given a lot, crossed over with Buck Rogers and Captain Kirk, given a lobotomy and his own overinflated ego and a team to lead, and you get Buick Starpoon, an idiotic military commander who's more concerned with getting his name in the newspapers than he is in saving the day. Either way, the team he leads, the Wild Rangers, because they're G.I. Joe parodies, that means all of them, including Buick Starpoon, every member has a military specialty. That's their special skills and abilities. Buick Starpoon's special skill is that he's a starship captain who leads the Wild Rangers into battle. Now, all the Wild Rangers, by the way, wear the same uniform as Buick Starpoon. They wear this sort of space cadet, Starfleet-looking uniform. So anyone on this cover wearing this uniform, they're a member of the Wild Rangers. So let's look at them now. Over here, this guy with the mohawk, his name is Roadhog. His military specialty is that he's a soldier from the U.S. Army who was transferred over to the Wild Rangers to fight the Scumdogs. Then we have Beach Pounder. His skill is that he was once a member of the Marines. Then he became a Wild Ranger. Then we have Blast Tank. Blast Tank is a tanker. That means he drives around weaponized vehicles like this, or, well, tanks. Yeah, Blast Tank is this guy with the helmet, by the way, folks. See him? And Beach Pounder is this bald guy with the gun, as I said. Either way, let's go over here and let me tell you about this cover. They're all on. It's one of 3 different variant covers. That means when you, can finally back my book. Yeah, when you can finally back my book, you'll have 3 different covers to back and choose for your copy of it. Then we have Girl Friday. Girl Friday is a female member of the Wild Rangers. Girl Friday is this woman here with the short hair. Girl Friday was assigned to the Wild Rangers by her superiors, basically to babysit and make sure they do their jobs. She's Buick Starpoon's lieutenant, and she basically, tries to basically steer him and his team in the right direction. Unfortunately, Buick Starpoon and the rest of the Wild Rangers basically consider her a real nag, and Buick Starpoon mostly orders her to sit and spin, causing her to hate him all the more. Either way, then we have Deathmug's henchmen, Murdermouth and Sloppy. Sloppy is the big fat guy with tentacles growing out of his head, and Murdermouth is the guy wearing the top hat and leather jacket. These two guys are your classic henchman villains, total idiots but fun to read about. Then we have Hair Metal Doctor. Hair Metal Doctor is the guy wearing the surgical mask and wielding the electric guitar, along with Miss Rusty Melons over here. This woman over here with the long hair, folks. You see her? These two characters are parodies of two characters from the G.I. Joe cartoon. Yeah, they're parodies of two characters from the villains of the show, Dr. Mindbender and the Baroness. Dr. Mindbender inspired me to create Hair Metal Doctor here because his costume on the G.I. Joe cartoon honestly made Dr. Mindbender look more like a hair metal musician than a mad scientist. I thought, why not create a villain who was a hair metal musician and a bad guy? So I created Hair Metal Doctor, who was a mad scientist and a rock musician all in one. Either way, he was hired by the Scumdogs. Yeah, hired onto their team. It's why he's a human and not a monster like the rest of them. Either way, he invents weapons and machines for them to take over the world. And Miss Rusty Melons, as I said, is a parody of the Baroness. The Baroness was Cobra's top spy and information agent. She was an incredibly rich woman who became a terrorist and wanted to help Cobra take over the world. In contrast, Miss Rusty Melons is also a incredibly rich woman. She was the CEO of her own company. Yeah, she was the CEO of her own company and had everything, but she was bored with her life. When the Scumdogs became villains, she decided to join up. Yeah, she decided to join up with them and help them take over the world. Not because and not because she believes in them, but because she thinks it will be fun. That's Scumdogs, folks. Go back and when it's finally out. And when you're up, well, go back and when it's finally up for you to back. Yeah. Either way, let's go over here, folks, and look at some Indiegogo's. Here we have, well, King Cryptid. Yeah, 5 through 9, Monsters and Mysteries. This book looks pretty good, folks. Or should I say it's 5 different books all in one. Or should I say it's 5 issues. Either way, this episodic ongoing Monster and Mystery series follows New England's supernatural hero, King Cryptid. Every issue has a complete story and is part of a larger continuity, printed in a classic style with glossy covers and newsprint interiors, created, written, lettered, and designed by Peter Schimmetti. Yeah, Peter Schimmetti, published by Alternate Comics. And these 5 issues, King Cryptid will basically be facing in issue 5, White Mountain Yeti. Issue 6, he encounters Dragon Verdurkin. Issue 7, he meets Wendy the Werewolf and the Cryptid Hunter Victor Lugo. Issue 8, he basically punches out the Zeta Reticulons. Issue 9, he basically faces down the Puckwudgies. You can back these 5 issues for, well, $15. Now, that's pretty good for 5 issues, folks. But if you haven't backed King Cryptid before, folks, there's also the King Cryptid, 1 through 9 catch-up perk, which for $25, you can get issues 1 through 9 together for $25. There's also basically, for another $25, another perk, you can basically get issues 5 through 9, both signed and unsigned together. And for $45, folks, you have the catch-up perk, and you can get both issues 1 through 9, both signed and unsigned together for $45. Good prices there, folks, for some good-looking books. Either way, let's go over here and look at Starbarian Tales, perhaps, or should I look at the Blue Bombshell Returns? Let's look at the Blue Bombshell Returns. Let's jump right into the synopsis. Hey, comics fans, the Blue Bombshell is back, baby, and this time around she's facing off against a whole new slew of she's facing off against a whole new slew of supervillains and arch enemies, as everybody wants a piece of the Blue Bombshell. New bad guys, Thundercock and Super Tits, are looking to make Bombshell regret ever becoming a superhero in the first place. Not bad, folks. Either way, you can back this book for $25. You have a choice of several different covers that you can choose from to basically back your book. You even have an add-on cover as well. Now, you can back these books for $25 each, folks. You have covers A through D. Here's cover A, folks, looking pretty good. Here's cover B, which is a homage cover to Jim Lee's X-Men 272. You also have covers C and D, which are basically adult covers, meaning the characters bare their breasts on the fronts. Here's cover C, folks. And here's cover D. You can back cover C and D together for $50. But if you want any individual cover, folks, it's $25, meaning cover A or cover B. There's also an add-on cover, folks, which is basically, the Trump wins variant, which means when you basically back any individual cover here, folks, or perk, you can hit the add-on. Yeah, you can hit the add-on button and add on this exclusive Trump wins cover for an extra $25. Not bad. But let's go over here and look at the Blue Bombshell Returns, trailer now. And that was the Blue Bombshell Returns, folks. It's up on Indiegogo. Go back it. You can back it for $25. That's pretty good. Now, let me go over here, folks. Let's see. Well, we're 2 minutes in. Not bad. Either way, let me basically do this. And basically, let's start my stream now, folks. Let me do this. Here we are. The Philip experiment. Did scientists, the Philip experiments. Scientists create a ghost? Did they, folks? Let's find out. The 2014 film The Quiet Ones was inspired by real historical events known as the Philip experiment. What many don't realize is that the Philip experiment was an actual research project conducted in Toronto in 1972. Organized to test whether paranormal phenomena such as ghosts, spirits, demons, and poltergeists could be products of human expectation, imagination, and visualization. The study involved a group of 8 participants, some of whom were scientists with no prior interest in the occult. Their findings astonished them. To this day, the true nature of the Philip experiment remains a mystery. Did the group unknowingly summon a supernatural entity, or did they create a ghost or other phenomena through sheer belief? Maybe, folks. We'll find out as we read further into the article. Either way, September 1972, the birth of the Philip experiment. The idea that paranormal entities could be manifestations of the human mind was not new. Paranormal researchers often noted that poltergeist activity, the movement of objects without an apparent visible cause, often seemed to center around a teenager in the affected household, most often a young female. Could such activity somehow be the product of human will or the emanation of a person's negative energy? If so, through intense and prolonged concentration, could a group of people purposefully create a collective thought form? This is both known as basically a tulpa, which is basically an Eastern Asian belief system practiced by Buddhists, as well as basically known as an egregore as well, folks. Usually a tulpa is one person believing in an entity, and it basically becomes almost to the point of it basically becomes so real, it takes on it can't, or basically in some cases, if you believe the stories, take on a life of its own. An egregore is basically a creature created by, or basically similar to a tulpa, but it's created by more than one person believing in an entity at one time, folks. And it's basically a collective belief of a bunch of energy basically making an entity, not just one person. Either way, did these people purposefully create a collective thought form? Perhaps. So let's continue. Indeed, researchers at the Toronto Society for Psychical Research, PR, believed they could prove that ghostly manifestations and poltergeist phenomena were the products of the human mind. Their research, conducted by the Owen Group, would become what many consider to be one of the most important parapsychological studies in history. Here we have this group, apparently, folks. TSPR's goal was to quite simple, could they create a ghost out of their own minds? To reach their goal, they first assembled a team of prominent, respected participants. And did they do it, folks? We simply don't know, but here they are basically about to maybe try and basically produce one of these entities. Very interesting, folks. This article, The Philip Experiment, Did Scientists Create a Ghost? And these are the scientists right here, folks. Did these people create something like this? Maybe. Either way, the group's members were not skittish teenagers, crazy crackpots, or even believers in the paranormal in general, but rather a housewife, a bookkeeper, a sociology student, an accountant, an industrial designer, a psychologist, and a former chairperson of Mensa, an organization considering the top 1% of the country's intellectual elite. The group was led by Dr. Arg Owen, a member of the Department of Preventative Medicine and Biostatistics at the University of Toronto. Together, they became known as the Owen Group. The Owen Group, huh? That's for some reason that gives me a chill. Almost, that's like something you would see in a horror movie, folks. The Owen Group. Either it's a name of a cult, or maybe some sort of evil scientific, or some sort of a group of basically mad scientists. Considering what they were going to attempt, folks, some people would say that they are part of doing something that was more occultish, as well as basically performing mad science. Either way, apparently, people are still not quite sure exactly what happened. So maybe they did do something that would basically be considered more mad science than anything else. Maybe they did create a monster. Either way, the Owens Group's objective to create a ghost. So let's read on, folks. Yeah. And find out if they did. The objective of the Owen Group was to create a fictional character whom they named Philip, and then through a purposeful methodology, attempt to contact the fictional entity and receive readily apparent communications from it in return. To begin with, they created a biography of their fictional character, Philip Azerford, which described the tragic events that Philip had suffered. The biography that they created was based partly on fact, but also included fictional elements inserted into the biography to trip up the group, according to Owen. It was essential to their purpose that Philip be a totally fictitious character, not merely a figment of the imagination, but clearly and obviously so, with a biography full of historical errors. The invented biographical data included contradictions, such as Philip being reincarnated several times, and historical inaccuracies, e.g., Dillington Hall really does exist, but the description given in the biographical account is fake. Below, in part, is the biography that the Owen Group member Sue penned for the Philip experiments. Philip was an aristocratic Englishman living in the middle of the 1600s at the time of Oliver Cromwell. He had been a supporter of the king and was a Catholic. He was married to a beautiful but cold and frigid wife, Dorothea, the daughter of a neighboring nobleman. One day, when out riding on the boundaries of his estate, Philip came across a gypsy encampment and saw three beautiful dark-eyed dark-eyed girl, raven-haired gypsy girl, Margot, and fell instantly in love with her. He brought her back secretly to live in the gatehouse near the stables of Dillington Manor, his family home. For some time, he kept his love nest secret, but eventually Dorothea realizing he was keeping someone else there, found Margot and accused her of witchcraft and stealing her husband. Philip was too scared of losing his reputation and his possessions to protest at the trial of Margot, and she was convicted of witchcraft and burned at the stake. Philip was subsequently stricken with remorse that he had not tried to defend Margot and used to pace the battlements of Dillington in despair. Finally, one morning, his body was found at the bottom of the battlements once he had cast himself in a fit of agony and remorse. Yeah, here's a picture they made of the man, folks. Interesting. Either way, the group next petitioned a sketch of Philip, a physical caricature used to put a face on their fictional being. Work to contact Philip then began in earnest, which provided the group with more results than they had anticipated. All right. Now, the sittings commence. A spirit introduces himself to the world. Yeah, the sittings are basically their seance, folks. Basically named for the group, basically getting together, meditating on this creature, or should I say, meditating on Philip and bringing him into his spirit into existence. Maybe they did. And we'll read that in a moment, folks. Let me go back over here because I want to basically see if anyone's watching us. We have 2 watching. That's pretty good. Let me go over here and do this and basically do this. Let's go over here. Wrong one. Here we are. Let me do this. Yeah, not too bad. All right, we have 15 watching, folks. Okay, 16, 17, 18 watching. Not bad. Ooh. Thank you for tuning in so far, folks. This is looking good. Either way, let's continue. In September 1972, the Owen Group began formal weekly sittings in the Philip room, during which they sat together and discussed, let me do this, folks. Do this. Yeah, which they sat and discussed Philip and his life. They meditated on his being and attempted to create a collective hallucination of his spirit. During the early sessions, the group sought to create a common mental picture of Philip and his surroundings, focusing on his appearance, day-to-day activities, and his feelings toward his wife, Dorothea, and gypsy lover Margot. Although some members occasionally claimed to feel a presence at times, and others reported seeing vivid images of Philip in their mind. After several months, no communication, no manifestations, no phenomena of any kind could be created through their attempts. That is, until they decided to turn off the lights. Maybe that helps, folks. With no satisfactory results from the efforts, it was suggested by British psychologist Kenneth J. Batchelder that the group changed tactics, surmising that some group members harbored skepticism and hence they should conduct their seances in an atmosphere that was less academic and more conducive to the summoning of ghostly spirits. Perhaps that's a good idea, folks. Perhaps they even led the spirit to basically manifest and basically even become real, supposing that there was never, actually, they say themselves, folks, that Philip Cromwell here didn't exist, but they created his soul. Now, if you look in basically historical records, folks, Philip Cromwell probably never didn't exist, but his spirit exists possibly now. So, if that's true, folks, and this man remembers all these things that happened to them, even though it's historically inaccurate, how does that fit into history in our world? I mean, yes, he's a creature that's basically created from basically people's beliefs. But what about his history? Everyone he knew, do they exist as well? Well, I'm just asking, folks. Perhaps maybe when they created Philip here, maybe they didn't so much create him as basically summon him from a different universe. Maybe in another universe where his timeline, all the events in his life actually happened. I mean, if you believe in multiverse theory, then there must be a reality somewhere where Philip actually existed. And perhaps they basically summoned him to this world, perhaps. Or maybe they did create him. But as I said, folks, if that's true, what about all the other people he had in his life? I mean, if he basically is a living, breathing, and, okay, not living, but basically, let's say maybe existing or basically undead being, he did know these people, and, well, he believes in them now. So do they also get a chance at life or something, or get an existence of their own? I'm just asking, folks. Does he accept the fact that he's just that he was made whole cloth from people's imagination? And how does that affect someone's psychology? No wonder. Basically, no wonder if these entities are made from such a process. If what we call demons and angels and ghosts are just created whole cloth from imaginations, we can even affect the physical world. No wonder at times demons are so malevolent, because they know they only have a temporary life before they fade out of existence, perhaps. But then again, is that true? Maybe, as I said, folks, maybe they're actually summoned to this world from people believing in them. And when they basically that energy is used up, they go back to where they came from. Perhaps Philip, as I said, was summoned from another world or something. Maybe. Either way, they basically changed tactic, the group here, the Owen group, they changed tactic, basically saying that because they had no basically real results from their meditative sessions, they decided to basically turn off the lights, change tactic, and see if they change the atmosphere of their tests, maybe this would make the situation more prone to a spirit manifesting. So let's read on and find out what happened next. They began mimicking the procedures used in a traditional seance session. The lights were dimmed, and the group gathered around a table, surrounded with objects from Philip's fictional time period, as popularized in traditional spiritualism seances. Group members sat around the table, placing their fingers lightly on the surface, and called for Philip to appear. Shortly after the traditional seance settings began, suddenly out of the blue, a loud rap echoed through the room. Members of the team noted later that the rap was distinctive, clear, and so violent that the table itself vibrated. Members said that the sound was felt and more than heard. This was followed by a number of distinctive knocks. It was felt more than heard, indeed, folks. Ooh, you can feel that. Here's another picture of the group, folks. After these first communications from Philip, the group began querying the entity, agreeing on a one rap for yes, two raps for no of expressing themselves. So we see that there as well, folks. So that is interesting. So they basically said, if you are Philip, we will say this. If one rap will be for yes and two raps for no. If you do that, do you agree to that, Philip? I imagine that's what they asked. So they heard, rap, a big tap like that, folks. And it was, and basically like, and that basically is how they basically communicated with Philip. Either way, I can understand why they would do that, folks, and stuff like that. But did they really truly believe this was happening, or was it? Do they believe that at least some of them believe this was all happening in their heads? Perhaps some sort of collective hypnosis or hallucination. I mean, how did these more skeptical members basically how did they basically conceptualize this? How did they deal with it when they more or less didn't believe in this sort of phenomena? I imagine it basically, as they went on, folks, they just had to deal with this and realize that maybe indeed there was something, a real physical presence there, that Philip was real. But let's continue and hear where this story goes, folks. So, through this new means of communication, basically of communicate, where they basically did one rap for yes and two raps for no, folks. I imagine they got a lot of raps for yes, folks. Either way, the group learned the finer details of Philip's life. However, they noted that the only details Philip initially provided were historical details that any member of the group could have, known beforehand. Hence, the Owen group theorized that the information coming from Philip was information being fed into the conversation through their own collective unconsciousness. Maybe, folks. Remember, this entity, Philip, was created from their mind, so he would only know anything that any member of the group knew. It is something, folks. But apparently, this was what basically was what was happening at first. Apparently, other things were going to happen as well. But then again, I can believe that this entity that they created through their collective psychic energy would only know what they knew at best, folks. And remember, they fed Owen here, the Owen group here fed Philip basically misinformation as well. They purposely made an inaccurate. They basically made many historical inaccuracies in Philip's backstory. Why? Because they did this to distinguish him from any other, from any other thing that presumably from any other ghost or basically historical figure, making a wholly uniquely being. Why? Because remember, folks, this being Philip here was basically fed by information created from these people. If he they did this because they didn't want to basically use an actual person who existed in basically history to do this and stuff like that. Remember, the group did this because they would know, the group and maybe the people who were made up the group knew very little about these people, or basically knew enough about them. And it would basically be like more or less basically, I'm trying to find the right wording here, folks. It would be information that everybody knew. So basically, if they tried summoning something and basically said that they summoned the spirit of, say, George Washington, or basically maybe Napoleon, this is information that everybody knows and stuff like that. So you can't really prove that as basically being a real spirit. I mean, how many people have basically had seances and contacted some some very powerful or basically well-known historical figure, right? So basically they use these inaccuracies and made this person up from whole cloth because they wanted to use it as a way to basically scientifically distinguish him from other means of communication with these spirits, like basically seances. I mean, the seances here basically contacting a person who actually existed, folks, but no longer does. Here they wanted to try and contact an entity and see if they could actually basically scientifically prove that these entities could basically be created, and maybe they were basically created by basically the minds of people. And apparently they succeeded, but apparently this was not the only thing they basically they succeeded in doing. Apparently this, as I said, the article says that the actual Philip experiment yielded results that were basically so mesmerizing and amazing that the group couldn't believe the results. Either way, indeed, this is why they made a whole cloth of fictional person. Either way, let's continue though, because I'm getting a bit bored now. I want to hear more what happens. From this point forward, however, basically where the group were talking with Philip, and basically when the group was talking with Philip, he only gave them information that any member of the group would probably know, common information that probably everyone knows, as well as maybe information that the group knew individually and stuff like that. Either way, from this point forward, however, things would basically take a trip. It means basically the information they were getting from Philip would basically become more amazing and more out there. Because as the article says, From this point forward, however, the phenomena expanded, producing a wide range of paranormal activity that the group was never able to fully explain. Auditory study of the loud raps showed a unique sound envelope, one that could not be reproduced by the researchers. As I said, folks. So not only was Philip basically maybe possibly going to talk about things only he knew about that the group couldn't possibly know about, but also they were basically seeing unreproducible results in the data. Yeah, they heard these loud raps that none of these people could reproduce by themselves. So other phenomena was going to basically come and even more out there information and basically phenomena was going to occur because of this experiment. So let's read on. Soon the group recognized that the entity that they had conjured, had a distinct personality. He had likes, dislikes, and strong views on various subjects made clear to the group members by enthusiasm or hesitancy. Hesitancy. In his responses. Loud knocks were received in response to mundane questions, but if the group asked Philip about his wife, Dorothea, loud scratching noises would emanate from table or chairs instead. Soon after the verbal communications began, Philip began producing an extraordinary visible physical manifestations. In response to questions, group members began to hear whispers in their ears. In one of the early sessions, the group was stunned when the table suddenly and violently jumped and slid across the floor. Now, basically, and if you know anything about, magic, folks, most magicians will say that maybe one of the group actually caused this table to jump up and slide across the floor, that they pushed themselves. But maybe they did so in basically a state of maybe one of the members did this in a state where he didn't realize what he was doing. That's what basically skeptics and magicians will say, that this is something you see before, folks. As I said a few days ago, one of the ways that basically people can make you believe that something weird is happening in a seance is by literally tipping your chair over and making it look like you're floating. At least as far as I know, folks. This is how some practitioners or should I say magicians, stage magicians, make people believe what they're seeing is real. Either way, you get the idea. Now, let's get back to the article. Either way, apparently one of the things that happened was that, the group was stunned when the table suddenly and violently jumped and slid across the floor. Despite the fact that the table rested on thick carpeting, at one point it was documented that the table began to dance, tilting onto a single leg and spinning about. The researchers now had serious questions about the results that they were witnessing. To rule out hoaxes in the group, paper dollies were placed on the table under the fingertips of participants to foil any conscious attempts by members to make the table move. Cameras were brought in to film the proceedings. Cameras were brought in to film the proceedings. Some placed strategically to capture any purposeful attempt to move the table using the participants' knees. Still, the table would jump about, rock and shake of its own accord. Okay, then. Yeah. The Owen group members were both astounded and terrified of what they were experiencing. According to participants, room lights would dim, and when the group politely asked Philip to return them to their normal brightness, they would instantly turn back on. After feeling a distinct cool breeze blow across the table, the group asked if he could start and stop the wind at all. On command, Philip would send a whirlwind of air across the table and onto the participants' faces. On one occasion, it was reported that a fine cloud of mist formed and hovered over the center of the table. Soon, the table began to move around the room, rushing across the room to greet latecomers. The table began to move around the room, rushing across the room to greet latecomers. So literally, it would move around the room then. That's astounding, folks. So, literally, was it floating around the room like it was literally moving? Or was this like maybe a jerk or something? What I'm trying to say, folks, is when these people basically were sitting around the table, when a latecomer would come, the table would suddenly jerk in the direction, out of nowhere. Literally, from what we're reading here, folks, it sounds like the table literally just floated around across the room to meet the latecomer. I kind of doubt that's actually what happened here, but is that actually what's going on? Because when I hear they said that when they say that yeah, the table would begin to move around the room, rushing across the room to greet latecomers. I basically think they meant that the table jerked in their direction, not literally move over to them, literally flying across the room there, or basically moving across the room on the floor, because that sounds almost too astounding to believe. But then again, maybe that's exactly what happened. Let's read on. We'll read on, find out, folks. Yeah. Either way, on several occasions, pushing and tapping. Well, yeah, on several occasions, pushing and trapping a team member into a corner of the room. Oh, so literally, basically, the table would basically push and trapping that team member in a corner of the room. This is what the table would do. Literally pushing them to a corner of the room, literally almost trapping them there. So literally, the table would basically be moving that far out of it would basically move several feet, trapping a person in one corner of the room, and no one could basically explain it. I mean, literally, the only way I could explain this, folks, is at least one person or several people literally pushing the table and just literally pushing the table into someone and trapping them in a corner. If not, folks, then literally you've seen literal poltergeist activity that's basically equivalent to basically the most outrageous things I've ever heard about from any poltergeist or basically paranormal case I've ever heard of or read through. Here's a video detailing the Philip experiment, folks. Very interesting. I'm not quite sure I'll show you this video because I don't want to get a copyright strike. But maybe I could look at it. In fact, maybe I'll do this. Come on here. I want to see what altered dimensions. Let me take a look at this live. It doesn't look like they'll copyright strike me if I look at this video, folks, and stuff like that. So maybe take a quick look at it. Just basically parts of it and stuff like that. Look at that. No. I don't hear any things, but you see this, folks. Yeah, look at that. This is them basically summoning this one of these.
Have you seen Dorothea lately? No. Would you like to see Dorothea lately? No.
Didn't you love Dorothea in your time?
No. That was too.
Yes, we need them louder.
Do it louder. Philip, did you like Dorothea in your time?
Come on. There are no options in that. Come on. They want you to move. They moved before. They want you to move.
Philip, if you perform, you should have a nice big pint of beer. Would you like that? Good.
Yes, now that was the loudest rap of the evening.
I just saw that woman tap the thing there, folks.
Now that was the loudest rap of the evening.
Philip, if you perform, you should have a nice big pint of beer. Would you like that? Good.
Yes, now that was
that woman was tapping her fingers, but that was a loud tap. I mean, it didn't look like she basically hit the table that hard, so maybe it was. And the guy over there basically covered her fingers, trying to make sure she wasn't making the tapping noise. So I'll say that, folks. It's tapping is suspect to me, but I'll watch a bit more of the video and stuff like that. Either way, what we saw there was certainly insane so far, folks. But if you want to know about basically this table flowing around that we just watched, that can basically be explained. I mean, I've seen several magicians explain how they can do that. Basically, you didn't see every leg in the table basically float individually, did you, folks? It could be that maybe one of the participants nudged their foot under one of the table legs and then made the table basically lift up. Maybe they did this, and maybe they didn't realize they were doing this. But that's usually the case with basically how skeptics will argue this. Well, probably how you can explain it away. Either way, let's watch the rest of this video.
wrap of the evening.
Yes, he loves beer. He loves
Well,
beer.
keep
Yeah.
on that pain there.
100 bottles of beer in the wall. 100 bottles of beer. 100 bottles of beer. 99 bottles of beer on the wall. 99 bottles of beer on the wall. 99 bottles of beer.
Would you like two bottles of beer?
Oh, the circulation.
Yes.
A little bit louder
A
than
little
that.
louder than that. Let Alan hear that you want two
Come
bottles.
on, Philip,
He's
let me
going to
hear
buy
you.
it.
Let me hear you.
There?
Yeah.
There's a wrap.
There.
Now, all hands are visible. Let's just dwell on this point. All hands are visible at this point, yet the wraps are clearly coming from, it would appear, certainly from within that table. Let's try it again. Philip, give us a good, loud, clear rap.
For one bottle of beer. Louder than that.
Come on, louder, Philip.
Louder for two.
Come on, Philip.
Philip, if you want a bottle of beer, rap loudly.
That's just...
Louder, Philip?
Come on, Philip, louder. Here comes the microphone.
It has to be louder, Alan won't buy it.
Come on, Philip.
Come on.
What?
Right,
I didn't hear
right under the microphone, Philip.
Right here, Phil. Right here.
Keep going.
Right here.
No, he's doing it over in
Come on,
that corner.
come on,
Doing
Philip,
that
louder
corner. Come
and
on,
louder.
Louder.
Oh, good.
Now, obviously, skeptics will argue that might be that what we just saw there is because one of these people did make that tapping sound themselves. It could be, but it certainly is very interesting what we just saw, folks. Very, very, very interesting. Now, let me do this. Here we are. Let's get back to the article, folks. But what we saw was definitely very interesting. Let's continue. Now, word spreads. The Philip experiment becomes a worldwide phenomenon. Now, before we read this part, folks, let me go over here. Let me mute that, folks. Let me do this. See anyone's watching us? Not too bad. Either way, as I said before, folks, I'm not just going to basically wholly believe what we just saw was real. Because there's too much a chance that basically, hokery could basically be a part of it as well. Or maybe these people didn't realize that what they were doing. Maybe one of these people didn't basically realize they were the one making this, rapping this sound. Remember, that woman basically tapped her fingers and could have basically produced something like this. It was almost like what we just heard. But she didn't appear to basically be really tapping all that hard, was it? Either way, you get it. But let's continue. Word spreads. The Philip experiment becomes a worldwide phenomenon. Word of the experiment's extraordinary results spread and quickly captured the attention of the public. A 16mm movie was produced by the group in 1974 titled The Philip the Imaginary Ghost, which documented the experiment's conception. What actually happened and showed the table's movements and what actually happened. And it showed the table's movements and loud booming raps, which is what we just watched as well, folks. Now, the footage we saw could have come from this movie, from this video they made, or not. Maybe it's another video they made. I don't know, but definitely that was one of the Philip experiments that were being conducted and stuff like that. Either way, if true, folks, this is truly very, very extraordinary that these people were able to basically literally produce these supernatural phenomena, and literally there was no one basically producing themselves. If we take it for a moment that this is all actually real. But once more, let's continue. Media outlets responded in CBS television event. Well, let me try it again, folks. Media outlets responded, and CBS television even sent a crew to film the events for a TV documentary, Men Alive, during the filming before a live audience of more than 50 people. Philip produced booming raps on the table, turned lights throughout the room on and off, and in front of all witnesses present, levitated the table off the floor. The film crew, of course, was astounded but nonetheless, the Owen Group could not produce a scientific explanation for what they were witnessing. As far as anyone could tell, a physical entity had been summoned, and nobody knew how or why the manifestation took place. Several books were penned about the events witnessed during the Philip experiment. Iris Owen and Margaret Sparrows documented the events in their 1976 work Conjuring Up Philip, and several other paranormal-related books of the day include the incidents in their works. The 2014 movie The Quiet Ones was based upon the Philip experiment case. Some believe that the group made contact, while others believe their experience was not with the other side, but rather a form of psychokinetic phenomena, the ability to mentally affect the physical environment without any physical contact. Maybe both are true, folks. I'm saying basically we don't know exactly the real source of this phenomena, or even if it was real at all, but maybe both played a hand in the actual thing that was summoned. As I said, folks, if it was psychokinetic and Philip was totally a creature made up of the minds of just these people, maybe it was some sort of psychokinetic phenomena. But if they did somehow contact the other side, folks, maybe what they summoned was something real. Maybe it wasn't Philip. Maybe they didn't create Philip, but maybe it was something basically calling itself Philip. And this was the thing that basically then this was actually a thing that was causing the phenomena that these people were experiencing. Yeah, maybe what they summoned was a demon or something. And basically, it went there because, it was getting a ready supply of people believing in him and giving him energy to manifest more fully into the world. And this is why this demon said he was Philip, perhaps. I'm just giving you an idea that explains away the phenomena we just saw, folks. And even that, even though what we saw was very phenomenal, folks, it could be explained away by maybe hokery and trickery. I've seen a lot of magicians stage magicians do some very extraordinary things. And what we just saw there, folks, while very good, it could basically be explained away as well. Either way, that's just my view on it, folks. Before we continue, though, let me go back over here. We have 40 watching. That's pretty good, folks. Thank you for making 42 watching. 43 watching. Thank you for making this a wonderful live stream, folks. But let's continue, because we have to read a bit more, folks, before we end this live stream. Either way, the success of the Philip experiment prompted the group to launch additional studies. 5 weeks after the conclusion of the Philip experiment, researchers assembled a new group of people and began again with a new ghost named Lilith, a French-Canadian spy during World War II. Well, isn't that over the top, folks? Similar experiments were conducted using entities such as Sebastian, a medieval alchemist, and Axel, a man from the future. According to the researchers, all the subsequent experiments also produced unexplainable communications and physical manifestations. Several of the Owen Group members operated anonymously, and to date, we do not know the full identity of all participants. Below is what little detail we know of the people who participated in the Philip experiment. A.R.G. Owen, mathematician. Iris Owen, A.R.G. Owen, mathematician. We also have Iris Owen, wife of Arg Owen. Oh, I get it. That's why they have the Owen in their name. Then we have Margaret Sparrows, former chairperson of Mensa, Andy H., housewife, Lauren H., industrial designer, Al Peacock, heating engineer, Bernice M., accountant, Dorothy O'Donnell, bookkeeper, and Sidney K., sociology student. Dr. Joel Witten, psychologist. Sue, a former nurse with Canadian Armed Forces, penned the original biographical account of Philip. Either way, then we have this. We believe what we want to believe, and once we believe something, it becomes self-fulfilling truth. Seth Gordon. That's a little excerpt from what Seth Gordon that's a saying that Seth Gordon said one time, folks. Basically saying that we believe what we want to believe, and sometimes and once we believe something, it becomes a self-fulfilling truth. Basically saying that these people believed so much, or I should say they believed so much and so well and so fully that Philip became real, folks. Now we have criticism. For those that believe in the paranormal and seances, a theory that often floated around states that the Philip experiment didn't actually conjure Philip, but instead opened a door to allow another playful spirit to pretend to be Philip. Others claim it was a demon, but no reasons are provided for these theories. Well, that's easy to explain away, folks. Reasons for this is that the demon basically came there because they were basically putting off a lot of energy, and it basically, to the demon, this was food, and allowed it to manifest more fully. Now, a spirit basically would see this as basically him having fun with them, and basically taking advantage of what was going on as well, and stuff like that. Either way, let's continue. Looking at the experiment, though, through a more scientific lens, there are plenty of other theories and holes in the experiment. The experiment has been criticized for lacking solid controls and providing ambiguous results due to the unreliability of seances. Remember, folks, I mentioned earlier that basically some of these people could have been basically liars, or basically they could have inadvertently basically been causing the taps or the table to float by themselves, either basically pushing their body into it and causing the table to lean over and not really realizing what they were doing. Remember, this seance didn't have that many, or should I say this experiment, as they call it, folks, but they were using, even though it was very much like a seance, they didn't have many controls over it, folks. There's a possibility that basically some of these people didn't realize what they were doing, and they were the ones basically causing the physical manifestation. Remember that we saw that woman tap her fingers, and I don't think that she tapped hard enough to cause the sound that we heard, because it looked like she basically just was caressing the table, but it was like that. But we heard that, like a large rap, or at least it's a little louder than what we heard, folks. But you can understand why basically maybe she did cause that sound. It's a possibility. As I said, there weren't that many controls on the experiment, so we can understand why scientists look at this experiment with a critical eye and say that if this wasn't done well, this wasn't done with enough controls, and there's too much that could basically be wrong with your results. Yeah, they're critical of it, folks, with the unreliability of sciences. Yeah, basically, as the scientist said, the repeated tests, which created fictional characters named Lilith and Humphrey, yielded similar results under similar circumstances and were deemed inconclusive. Yeah, they also said that the resulting other tests that they did with basically Humphrey and Lilith, because they were using the same basically parameters of the test with the original Philip experiment, they're saying that basically because of that, the test results were non-reliable because they were doing the same thing over and over again, and maybe they were receiving the same results. As I said, folks, there's too much possibility that basically, maybe not outright hoaxery was going on, basically hoaxing these people. Maybe they were inadvertently doing it by themselves and not realize what they were doing, as I said. But that's just, as I said, this is my view on it. But let's read a bit more. The 19th century was the height of the spiritualism movement in many English-speaking countries. Many of those who performed seances and claimed to speak with spirits convinced many scientists and inventors that they were actually communicating with the dead. Even when people like Harry Houdini proved many of these tricks were scams, people still refused to see psychics as frauds. A famous example are the Fox sisters, 3 sisters who toured the United States performing seances and speaking to spirits who would respond with knocks on a table. Years into their touring, one of the sisters admitted the entire thing was a scam and showed how it was done by cracking the knuckles on her feet. Well, like that sort of, folks. I basically kind of cracked the knuckles on my feet as well. You hear that, folks? But it doesn't really sound like a tap either, does it? Let me try it again. I mean, I kind of did that myself, folks. I basically kind of cracked the knuckles on my feet, basically doing this. I only did it once. Sort of like that. Was it the same thing, folks? I'm not sure you could hear that. Or basically with me cracking the knuckles on my feet. But yeah, I can understand how that could happen as well. Apparently, this woman must have had arthritis then, folks. Because I can't do that basically too much except once. Either way, yeah. So, was it all flammery, folks? Were these people basically hoaxing themselves with their experiment? Basically, other scientists say yes, while people who basically say maybe not. And people who believe in spiritualism or basically believe in ghosts say that basically, no, there's also something to be criticized here, folks. You didn't basically create a spirit out of cold cloth, out of your own imagination. What you did was basically summon a spirit there and then playfully pretended to be, Philip. Perhaps that is true. Maybe that is true as well, folks. Either way, let's continue. But even after her admission, the Fox sisters were still able to fool some into believing that they were communicating with the dead and continued touring, albeit to a smaller audience. One specific trick psychics at the time used during a seance involved a group of participants placing their hands on a table and calling out to a spirit to move the table. Unbelievably, after some time, the table would move in various directions. This type of seance became known as table turning, the same method used in the Philip experiment. I can see that as well, folks. And how this is done, folks, is basically, one of the people who are basically doing this seance, they would put their foot under the table and move it. What they do is basically put their foot under one of the table legs and then move the table upward. Now, basically, there'd be some trouble with basically how to do this, but you could do it, folks. It has been done. I've seen it basically how people can do that as well. Another ways to do that is basically using your knee, basically placing it against the edge of the table and lifting it up, and then getting your foot under the leg, and then basically literally using that from that point on, using that to lift the table up. There are various ways to do this. As I said, there are other ways of doing this that are basically fooling people is by tipping your chair over and looking like and making it look like you're floating. Yeah. Either way, it's a possibility. But let's move on. Another theory suggests, suggests one or more of the group from the Philip experiment were involved in creating a hoax and were the ones cracking their knuckles or knocking on the table to answer in Philip's place. Since the rest of the group were truly believed and were required to believe, they didn't think twice if something looked off. I know. Remember, there's a possibility, there's too much of a possibility that maybe one of these groups basically decided to have fun with the others and make them think that it was all real. It's entirely possible other tricks were used to create a levitating table, like in the 19th century. A participant with a hooked ring attached to the table could easily lift the small card table, without even realizing it. Yeah, remember, basically, he could have hooked his ring on the table by accident and not realize it was actually happening. As I said, folks, there's too much of a possibility with this experiment. Maybe that either it was done with hokery, with flamery, or maybe the participants didn't realize that they were basically making the table move because they were too caught up in it. They were pushing their bodies against the table, and this caused the table to move, and they didn't realize that they were moving it. As I said, folks, I said that earlier, but let's continue. When the group was taped, performing the seance on television, this would have been hard to see by observers, just like it was hard for many, to disprove the Fox sisters and other psychics during their tours. On top of this, there were several things the cameras could convincingly never catch on tape, such as the flickering lights or Philip whispering to answers. Philip whispering answers. Sadly, folks. Despite all of this, it's important to note that the group did fall into obscurity. They didn't appear to have gained anything from creating a hoax. None became famous afterward. And from what I can tell, they didn't perform the seances for money. So maybe indeed, folks, this was all real. It's telling folks that these guys didn't want money or anything. Then again, there's also the possibility that maybe the guy was actually hoaxing these people. Maybe he just did it for fun. And that he got his fun and he basically decided to leave it at that. Either way, folks. Me, the burp there. Either way, in the decades after, many who believed the experiment was successful in creating a spirit performed their own versions. Some say that they replicated the results, while others weren't successful. In recent years, the 2004 Humphrey experiment, conducted by the Misery Side Anomalies Research Association of England, and the 2007 Skippy experiment, conducted in Sydney, Australia, both modeled their experiments after Dr. Owens. Both have not shown any proof of successfully creating a spirit. Sadly, folks, that seems to be what happened. Either way, do you think that the Philip experiment actually, did it? It sounds like it possibly did, folks. It's very interesting if true. Very amazing as well. But we can only say that maybe it's a possibility. Either way, folks, we're at the end. So please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics, They're Bad For You. The there is misspelled. It's Read Comics, They're Bad For You. It's supposed to be They're Bad For You. Yeah. But I basically misspelled the there in the title of my YouTube channel. It's Read Comics, They're Bad For You. It's THERE. So go subscribe to Read Comics, They're Bad For You. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications. And please share this video out. Now, folks, please go over and subscribe to Dark Sayings. Dark Sayings is like my show or Art Bell's old radio show. He basically does live stream because he does little videos or little movies on high strangeness and he does live streams around 10 o'clock p.m. at night. And every time we watch one of and his content is great, folks. Every time we watch one of Dark Saints live streams, you learn something new about the world of the paranormal. His short videos are also good, folks, but I love his live streams because they're just so much fun to watch. As I said, you learn something new every time you watch one of his live streams. So go subscribe to Dark Saints on YouTube and on BitChute. Then go subscribe to Robot Co-op. Robot Co-op is a live streaming gaming channel, but the whole show is basically based on that old TV show, Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know that TV show where that guy is trapped in outer space with these two wisecracking robots and they're forced to watch bad movies and then they roast them? Well, Robot Co-op is like that. They even have their own wisecracking robots, folks. But they're a live streaming gaming channel. They play good games, they play bad games, but they roast the hell out of them. You're going to love their live streams, folks. It's like being at a party. You sit back, eat something, and drink something, and have a good time. Yeah, and you're going to love their live streams on Sunday and Twitch, folks, because they're just so much fun to watch. So go subscribe to Robot Co-op on YouTube and on Twitch. Then go subscribe to Stitched. Yeah, to Stitched Together Picks. Stitched Together Picks is a horror movie review channel hosted by the maniacal cinephile who has multiple personalities. You're not just getting one character, you're getting a whole lot of them. All of them are fun. So go subscribe to Stitched Together Picks up on YouTube. Now remember, folks, down in the descriptions or in the chat, I left links. I left links to YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch or BitChute, Dark Saints, Robot Co-op, and Stitched Together Picks. Remember, go subscribe to Stitched Together Picks and Dark Saints, because I left their links down there, folks. But I really want you to use those links and go subscribe to my own channels. Because remember, folks, I'll be back soon, and I'm going to basically be back with 2 exclusive videos up on YouTube, or I should say up on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, and BitChute Twitch and BitChute very soon. Yeah, if you want to watch those videos, folks, use those links and go subscribe to me. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with another great live stream, followed by another great, 2 great videos. Until then, folks, as usual, bye. All right, folks, here we go.